Hey guys, Laney Flit here, and in this video I want to rank all of the quarterbacks who started a conference championship game but never started a Super Bowl. So let's talk about the criteria for being included in this list. So in order to be on this list, a quarterback must have started at least one conference championship game in their career, either AFC or NFC, but they must have never started a Super Bowl. So if they ever started a Super Bowl in their career, then they will not be included on this list. Now, the quarterback has to have started the game, so anyone who was a backup for a conference championship game will not be counted, and quarterbacks who were backups for Super Bowls can still be counted. So, although the conference championship game in the modern sense did not exist until 1970, for the purposes of this video, I am counting the NFL and AFL championships from 1966 to 1969 as conference championship games. Any title games prior to 1966 will not be counted because there was no Super Bowl back then. So there are a total of 39 quarterbacks who meet these criteria, and in order to make this ranking a bit easier, I have divided it into 4 tiers. So there's the bottom tier, the mid tier, the high tier, and the top tier. This is the first part of the video, which will be the bottom tier. So this will include quarterbacks 39 to 31. So with that being said, let's begin with number 39. So coming in at number 39, we have Dieter Brock, who led the Los Angeles Rams to the 1985 NFC Championship game. Now, it's a bit difficult to rank a guy who only played one season in the NFL, but I feel like you gotta put him at the bottom, even if he's a CFL legend. Ralph Brock, who wisely, in my opinion, chose to go by his middle name Dieter, was born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama. He initially played college football at Auburn before transferring to Jacksonville State. He did not attract any interest in the 1974 NFL Draft and was not selected by any team. Instead, he signed with the CFL's Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Brock would play for the Blue Bombers from 1974 to 1983. He took over as their starter in 1975 and would remain in that position for the rest of his tenure with the team. He was named the CFL's most outstanding player back-to-back in 1980 and 1981 after passing for over 4,000 yards both years. He was traded to the Hamilton Tiger Cats in 1983 and led the team to the 1984 Grey Cup, where they lost to Brock's old Blue Bombers. In 1985, Brock left the CFL and signed with the NFL's Los Angeles Rams. The Rams were looking for a replacement for the ineffective Jeff Kemp and leaped at the opportunity to sign the CFL legend. While the Rams' offense was mostly carried by star running back Eric Dickerson, Brock did his part and passed for 2,658 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. He led the Rams to an 11-5 record, an NFC West Division title, and a first-round bye. Brock played poorly in the divisional round against the Cowboys, but a 248-yard, 2-touchdown performance from Dickerson carried the Rams to a 20-0 victory. In the NFC Championship game, Brock and the Rams faced the 15-1 Bears and their monsters of the Midway defense. Brock passed for just 66 yards and an interception, while the Bears' incredible defense limited Dickerson to just 46 yards on 17 carries. A fourth-quarter fumble recovery returned for a touchdown sealed a 24-0 Bears victory. Brock began the 1986 season as the starter, but suffered a devastating knee injury in the first preseason game. The Rams responded by trading for rookie quarterback Jim Everett, who had been drafted by the Oilers but refused to sign with them, and he took over for Brock as the starter. After aggravating an injury to his back while attempting to rehab his knee injury, Brock chose to retire. Brock was inducted into the Canadian Football Hall of Fame in 1995. He remains the Blue Bombers' all-time passing leader. In his lone NFL season, he started 15 games, going 11-4, while passing for 2,658 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. Brock would be much higher up this list if his CFL accomplishments counted, but for the purposes of this list, I can only count NFL. As he only played one season in the NFL, he has to finish last. Coming in at number 38 is Sean King, who led the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to the 1999 NFC Championship game. Now, despite this hot start to his career, Sean King never really made it in the league. The future Buccaneer was a native of nearby St. Petersburg, Florida, and he played college football at Tulane. His hometown team selected him in the second round of the 1999 draft. The Buccaneers' incumbent starter in 1999 was future Super Bowl champion Trent Dilfer. King took over midway through the 1999 season after Dilfer suffered a season-ending injury. Led by head coach Tony Dungy and defensive coordinator Monty Kiffin, the 1999 Buccaneers were known for their elite Tampa 2 defense, which featured future Hall of Famers Warren Sapp, Derek Brooks, and John Lynch. Still, King played well enough to go 4-1 in the 5 games he started. He threw 7 touchdowns and 4 interceptions in those games. The Buccaneers finished 11-5 in 1999, winning the NFC Central and taking the NFC's second seed. They faced the Redskins in the divisional round, where King threw the go-ahead touchdown with 7:29 to go to lead the Bucs to a narrow 14-13 victory. They flew to St. Louis for an NFC Championship matchup against the Rams, which pitted the greatest show on turf against Tampa's elite defense. King threw for 163 yards and 2 interceptions in the game and could only muster 2 field goals. Still, the defense held the Rams' top-ranked offense to just 5 points, and the Bucs were clinging to a 6-5 lead with less than 5 minutes to go. Working against Bucs cornerback Brian Kelly, Rams wide receiver Ricky Proehl got just enough separation to haul in a 30-yard touchdown pass, giving the Rams an 11-6 lead. A late comeback attempt by the Buccaneers was foiled when, on a controversial call by the officials, an apparent catch by Buccaneers wide receiver Burt Emanuel was ruled incomplete. The Rams held on to win and would go on to defeat the Titans in the Super Bowl. The Buccaneers let Dilfer go the following season, handing the reins over to King to be the full-time starter. In 2000, King started all 16 games for the only time in his career. He put up a season that was decent but not great, passing for 2,769 yards, 18 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions. The Bucs finished 10-6 and were knocked out of the playoffs by the Eagles in the wild card round. Prior to the 2001 season, the Buccaneers signed journeyman free agent Brad Johnson, and he beat out King for the starting job. King would spend 3 more seasons in Tampa as the backup to Johnson and started just 1 game in that span. King watched from the bench as Johnson led the Buccaneers to victory in Super Bowl 37. In 2004, King signed with the Cardinals, but he started just 2 games before he was released. He spent 3 more seasons bouncing around practice squads before his career was over. In his NFL career, King started 24 games, posting a record of 14-10, and passed for 4,566 yards, 27 touchdowns, and 24 interceptions. He had a disappointing career after a promising rookie season and just couldn't win games when not carried by an elite defense. At number 37 is Bob Lee, who led the Minnesota Vikings to the 1977 NFC Championship game. Born in Columbus, Ohio, Lee played college football at California's University of the Pacific. The Vikings selected him in the 17th round of the 1968 draft. The Vikings drafted Lee to be their backup, and that's what he was for the majority of his career. After backing up Joe Kapp and Gary Quazzo, Lee would spend most of his career as the backup to Fran Tarkenton after the Vikings traded for him in 1972. Lee got his chance to be a starter in 1973 when he signed with the Atlanta Falcons. He played well for them that year, going 8-2 as a starter while throwing 10 touchdowns. Despite their 9-5 record, the 1973 Falcons missed the playoffs. In 1974, things fell apart for Lee in Atlanta. He went just 2-7 while tossing a dismal 3 touchdowns to 14 interceptions. The Falcons finished with a league-worst 3-11 record and received the top pick in the 1975 draft, which they used to draft Lee's replacement, California product Steve Bartkowski. They let Lee go after the season. After failing to catch on in Atlanta, Lee returned to the Vikings in 1975. He resumed his role as the backup to Fran Tarkenton. Lee entered the game in the fourth quarter of Super Bowl XI in 1976 and threw a touchdown pass as the Vikings fell to the Raiders 32-14. The season for which Lee is most notable is 1977. After leading the Vikings to a 5-3 record, Tarkenton broke his leg in Week 9, forcing the Vikings to turn to Lee for the remainder of the season. Lee went 3-1 in the remaining games of the season, helping the Vikings to a 9-5 record and an NFC Central title. The Vikings leaned heavily on their run game, and Chuck Foreman came through for them in the divisional round, rushing for 101 yards and a touchdown as the Vikings defeated the Rams 14-7. They faced the Cowboys in the NFC Championship game. Lee passed for 158 yards and an interception in the game as the Cowboys won 23-6. Lee would spend one more season in Minnesota backing up Tarkenton before finishing his career with 2 years as a backup in Los Angeles. A career backup, Lee started only 30 games in his NFL career and went 19-11, throwing 5,034 yards, 30 touchdowns, and 40 interceptions. Spending so much time as a backup is not bound to get you high up this list. At number 36 is Pete Beathard, who led the Houston Oilers to the 1967 AFL Championship game. A member of a famous football family, Pete Beathard was a native of Los Angeles County. He was the younger brother of Bobby Beathard, the Hall of Fame general manager of the Redskins and Chargers, and the great-uncle of C.J. Beathard, the former 49ers quarterback who currently plays for the Jaguars. He played college football at USC, where he led the Trojans to the 1962 National Championship and to victory in the 1963 Rose Bowl. He was drafted second overall by the Chiefs in the 1964 AFL Draft and by the Lions fifth overall in the NFL Draft. He chose to sign with the Chiefs, where he spent the first 3 seasons of his career as the backup to Len Dawson. He started only 2 games in this span, going 1-1. Beathard got his chance when he was traded to the Houston Oilers in October of 1967, midway through his 4th season in the league. He took over starting duties from Jackie Lee, who had been dealt to the Chiefs as part of the trade. Beathard made the most of his opportunity. While he threw a mediocre 9 touchdowns and 14 interceptions, he helped the Oilers go 7-2 in the games he started. The Oilers' 9-4-1 record was good enough to win the AFL East, qualifying them for the AFL Championship game against the champions of the Western Division, the Oakland Raiders. Beathard threw a 5-yard touchdown pass in the 4th quarter of the game, but that was the Oilers' only score as the Raiders won a dominant 40-7 victory. The Raiders would go on to lose to the Packers in Super Bowl II. Beathard would spend 2 more seasons in Houston as the primary starter, but this team wouldn't see the same success in the win-loss column that they had in 1967. Beathard's best season was 1969, when he passed for 2,455 yards, the only time in his career that he would break 2,000 passing yards. However, he only passed for 10 touchdowns to 21 interceptions that year. Beathard was traded to the Cardinals in 1970 and to the Rams in 1972 before returning to the Chiefs in 1973. He was mostly used as a backup, and in the 5 games he started for the Cardinals in 1971 was the most action he would see. After leaving the Chiefs in 1973, he spent a few seasons playing for teams in the World Football League before his career was over. In a career that lasted 10 NFL seasons, Beathard started 35 games, going 18-16-1, passing for 8,176 yards, 43 touchdowns, and 84 interceptions. Primarily a backup, Beathard was never able to start consistently enough to work his way further up this list. At number 35 is James Harris, who started the 1974 and 1975 NFC Championship games for the Los Angeles Rams. A native of Monroe, Louisiana, Harris played college football at the historically black Grambling State. The Bills selected him in the 8th round of the 1969 NFL Draft. He started 3 games in 3 seasons in Buffalo as the backup to Dennis Shaw, but in the process became just the 2nd black player to start a game at quarterback in the NFL. The Bills released him following the 1971 season, allowing him to sign with the Los Angeles Rams in 1972. After backing up incumbent starter John Hadel in 1973, Harris became the starter midway through the 1974 season when Hadel was benched due to ineffective play. Harris held down the starting job the rest of the season, going 7-2 in 9 games and throwing for 1,544 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. He was named to the Pro Bowl for this performance. Behind Harris's strong play, the Rams finished 10-4 in 1974, good enough to win the NFC West. Harris struggled in the divisional round against the Redskins, throwing just 95 yards and 2 interceptions, but strong performances from Lawrence McCutcheon and the defense led the Rams to a 19-10 victory. They advanced to face the Vikings in the NFC Championship game, making Harris the first black quarterback to start a conference championship game. Harris played better, passing for 248 yards, but threw 2 costly interceptions as the Vikings won a narrow 14-10 victory. Harris began the 1975 season as the starter and played well, going 11-2 in his 13 games started. He passed for 2,148 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions, which were all career highs. However, facing the Green Bay Packers in Week 13, Harris injured his shoulder, forcing his backup, 1973 second-round pick Ron Jaworski, to relieve him. Jaworski led the Rams to victories against the Packers and Steelers to help the Rams finish out a 12-2 season, earning them the top seed in the NFC. Jaworski also threw a touchdown and rushed for another in an impressive 35-23 victory over the Rams in the divisional round. Despite Jaworski's stellar play, head coach Chuck Knox was firm that a starter should not lose his job due to injury and named Harris the starter for the NFC Championship game against the Cowboys. However, Harris's first pass of the game was intercepted. After his second pass fell incomplete, Knox pulled Harris and put in Jaworski. Jaworski also struggled, throwing 2 interceptions, and the Cowboys won a resounding 37-7 victory to advance to the Super Bowl. Harris split time with Jaworski and rookie Pat Haden in 1976, and a quarterback carousel ensued, but eventually Knox settled on Haden as the starter. Haden led the 1976 Rams to a third straight NFC Championship game loss. In 1977, Harris was traded to the Chargers to serve as the backup to Dan Fouts. He started 9 games in 1977, while Fouts held out for more money but went just 4-5. He retired following the 1979 season after 11 years in the league. In his career, Harris started 41 games, going 25-16, while passing for 8,136 yards, 45 touchdowns, and 59 interceptions. While he had 2 good seasons, injuries limited him and he did not have a consistent career. At number 34 is Mark Malone, who started the 1984 AFC Championship game for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Malone was a native of the city of El Cajon, California, nearby San Diego. He played college football at Arizona State. When the Steelers selected him with the 28th overall pick in the 1980 draft, their plan was that he would eventually replace the aging Hall of Famer Terry Bradshaw. Malone started 2 games in 1981 in relief of Bradshaw, going 0-2 in those games. In 1983, when Bradshaw suffered a season-ending injury in the first game, Chuck Noll refused to hand the reins to Malone. Instead, they turned to 1977 fifth-round pick Cliff Stout. Malone rode the bench the whole year. Bradshaw retired following the 1983 season, while Stout left for the USFL, leaving Malone as the presumptive starter for 1984. However, the Steelers once again showed they did not have full confidence in Malone when they traded for Miami Dolphins quarterback David Woodley. Woodley and Malone split starting duties in 1984, with Malone starting 9 games and Woodley starting 7. In the 9 games he started, Malone went 6-3, throwing 2,173 yards, 16 touchdowns, and 17 interceptions. Despite a record of only 9-7, the Steelers won the AFC Central and received a first-round bye. Malone outperformed Woodley during the regular season, and Noll named him the starter for the playoffs. In the divisional round, Malone threw for 224 yards and a touchdown in a 24-7 victory over John Elway and the Broncos. In the AFC Championship game, they faced Dan Marino and the 14-2 Dolphins. Malone turned in a valiant performance, passing for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. However, he also threw 3 interceptions and could not keep up with Marino's 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. The Dolphins won 45-28 and would go on to lose to the 49ers in the Super Bowl. It remains the highest scoring conference championship game in NFL history. Malone and Woodley would split time again in 1985, but this time the Steelers would not reach the playoffs. In 1986, Noll decided to make Malone the full-time starter, a decision which caused Woodley to retire rather than be a backup. Malone started the majority of the games in 1986 and 1987, but his performances were mediocre to bad, including a dismal 6 touchdowns and 19 interceptions in 1987. With the Steelers preferring Bubby Brister as their starter, Malone left for San Diego in 1988 and was their primary starter that year, but played poorly there as well. He spent one more season as a backup with the Jets before he was out of the league. In a 10-year career, Malone started 53 games, going 23-30, tossed 10,175 yards, 60 touchdowns, and 80 interceptions. Despite a few bright spots, he could accurately be described as a first-round bust. At number 33, we have Pat Haden, who reached the 1976 and 1978 NFC Championship games with the Los Angeles Rams. An LA native, Haden stayed close to home and played college football at USC. Although he was a star at USC, his short stature, he stood only 5'10", and perceived lack of arm strength caused him to fall to the 7th round of the 1975 NFL Draft, where he was selected by his hometown Los Angeles Rams. He chose to spend the 1975 season playing for the World Football League Southern California Sun, an arrangement which allowed him to spend some time studying at Oxford on a Rhodes Scholarship. He reported to the Rams in 1976. He began the 1976 season as the third-string quarterback behind James Harris and Ron Jaworski. However, injuries to both Harris and Jaworski thrust Haden into the starting role. Haden started 7 games in 1976, putting up a stellar 5-1-1 record while tossing 8 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. Rams coach Chuck Knox kept Haden as the starter for the playoffs after the Rams finished 10-3-1 and captured an NFC West title. Despite 3 interceptions from Haden, his rushing touchdown helped lift the Rams to a 14-12 victory over the defending NFC champion Cowboys in the divisional round. The Rams advanced to face the Vikings in the NFC Championship game. Although Haden performed poorly, he actually played slightly better than Vikings QB Fran Tarkenton, who also played poorly. In the end, it was a blocked field goal returned for a touchdown that made the difference in a 24-13 Vikings victory. They went on to lose to the Raiders in Super Bowl XI. Prior to the 1977 season, Jaworski and Harris were both traded to the Eagles and Chargers respectively, leaving Haden as the sole starter. He was named to the Pro Bowl after going 8-2 in 10 starts, while throwing 11 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. The Rams would be knocked off in the divisional round. In 1978, Haden started all 16 games, leading the Rams to a 12-4 record. He fell just short of passing for 3,000 yards for the first time in his career, finishing with 2,995. Haden passed for 209 yards and 2 touchdowns to help defeat the Vikings in the divisional round, avenging the NFC Championship loss from 2 years ago. In the NFC Championship game, they faced the defending champion Dallas Cowboys. Haden was benched after throwing just 76 yards and 3 interceptions. Backup Vince Ferragamo entered the game, throwing 2 interceptions of his own. The Cowboys won a dominating 28-0 victory, keeping the Rams out of the Super Bowl yet again. The 1979 season did not go as well for Haden. He had the Rams sitting at 5-5 after 10 games when he suffered a broken finger. Ferragamo came off the bench and provided a spark for the Rams, helping them finish 9-7 after their 5-5 start, good enough for an NFC West title. Haden sat on the bench as he watched Ferragamo do what he could not, get the Rams to the Super Bowl. They lost to the Steelers 31-19 despite a strong performance from Ferragamo. Haden began the 1980 season as the starter, but suffered an injury in the season opener, forcing Ferragamo to replace him again. Ferragamo played well, passing for 3,000 yards and 30 touchdowns. Haden regained the starting job in 1981 after Ferragamo left for the CFL, but he once again was injured midway through the season. Facing the prospect of needing surgery in order to return to the field, Haden was offered a broadcasting job and decided to take it, ending his playing career after 6 NFL seasons. Haden started 55 games in his short career, going 35-19-1, while tossing 9,296 yards, 52 touchdowns, and 16 interceptions. Haden proved that he could win games, but injuries and inconsistent play limited him, and he was outperformed by his backup when it mattered. At number 32 is Case Keenum, who started the 2017 NFC Championship game with the Minnesota Vikings. Keenum was a native of Central Texas and went to high school in the city of Abilene. He stayed in state for college, playing for the Houston Cougars. While at Houston, Keenum shone and set NCAA records for passing yards and touchdowns, which he still holds. Despite his success, he was not a highly regarded prospect and was not selected by any team in the 2012 draft. He got to stay in Houston when he signed with the Texans as an undrafted free agent. After backing up Matt Schaub his whole rookie year, Keenum got his shot in 2013 when Schaub was benched for poor play in Week 7. Keenum would go on to start 8 games that year, but went 0-8 as the Texans finished a league-worst 2-14. Keenum began the 2014 season with the Rams, but returned to the Texans later that year and went on to win 2 games for them as a starter. Keenum returned to the Rams and spent the 2015 and 2016 seasons with them and started 14 games in those 2 seasons. He was let go following the 2016 season as first-round pick Jared Goff took over starting duties. Keenum signed with the Vikings in 2017 and became their starter after Sam Bradford was injured in Week 2. With expectations low, Keenum shocked the league by going 11-3 in the 14 games he started, while passing for 3,547 yards, 22 touchdowns, and only 7 interceptions. He led the Vikings to a 13-3 record and the 2nd seed in the NFC. His play was good enough that even when Bradford and Teddy Bridgewater were healthy, Keenum remained the starter. Trailing the Saints 24-23 in the closing seconds of the divisional round, Keenum connected with Stephon Diggs on the play immortalized as the Minneapolis Miracle, propelling the Vikings to a 29-23 victory. The miraculous victory sent the Vikings to Philadelphia. Despite being the away team, the Vikings and their top-ranked defense were 3-point favorites to beat the Eagles and their backup quarterback Nick Foles. This was a game that I was lucky enough to witness in person. Keenum led the Vikings to an early 7-0 lead, throwing a 25-yard touchdown to Kyle Rudolph on the opening drive. However, later in the first quarter, he threw a pick-6 to Eagles cornerback Patrick Robinson. This opened an onslaught of Eagles scoring, and the Birds would go on to win 38-7. They would defeat the Patriots in the Super Bowl. For his part, Keenum finished the NFC Championship game with 271 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Despite Keenum's stellar 2017 season, the Vikings chose to sign free agent Kirk Cousins rather than take a chance on him. Still, Keenum was rewarded with a 2-year, $36 million contract from the Denver Broncos. Keenum started all 16 games for the Broncos in 2018 and played well enough statistically, breaking 3,000 yards and tossing 18 touchdowns. However, the team only finished 6-10 and missed the playoffs. After drafting Drew Lock in the 2019 draft and signing Joe Flacco, the Broncos traded Keenum to the Redskins. He would start 8 games for the Redskins after injuries to Alex Smith and Colt McCoy, but he only went 1-7. Since 2020, he has been backing up Baker Mayfield on the Browns. In his career so far, Keenum has started 64 games, going 29-35, throwing 14,876 yards, 78 touchdowns, and 48 interceptions. He's had a good career for an undrafted player, but the fact remains that he's mainly been a career backup.
And for our last entry of the bottom tier, the best of the worst, number 31, we have Mark Sanchez, who started the 2009 and 2010 AFC Championship games with the New York Jets. Sanchez was a native of Orange County, California. He attended the same high school as Carson Palmer, a quarterback who will appear later on this list. He played college football at USC, making him already the third Trojan to appear on this list. In 2008, he led USC to a 12-1 record and won the Rose Bowl. Following this successful season, Sanchez entered the 2009 NFL Draft, where the Jets selected him 5th overall. Sanchez immediately became the starter for a team that had just lost Brett Favre to free agency. Sanchez started 15 games as a rookie and had some growing pains. He passed for 2,444 yards, 12 touchdowns, and 20 interceptions. While Sanchez was not a statistically good quarterback as a rookie, an elite defense led by Darrelle Revis and a run game led by Thomas Jones's 1,400 yards helped the Jets sneak into the playoffs as a 9-7 wild card. A 135-yard performance from Sean Green helped the Jets upset the Bengals on the road in the wild card round. Despite being 9-point underdogs on the road against the Chargers, a 128-yard performance from Green and a single touchdown pass from Sanchez helped the Jets eke out a 17-14 victory, sending them to the AFC Championship game against the 14-2 Colts. Despite being 8.5-point underdogs, 257 yards and 2 touchdowns from Sanchez helped make the game closer than expected. The Jets even had a 17-13 lead at the half, but trailing 30-17 in the final minutes of the fourth quarter, Sanchez threw a crucial interception that helped the Colts seal the game. The Colts held on for the victory and would go on to lose to the Saints in the Super Bowl. The elite defense and run game the Jets had fielded in 2009 were back in 2010, but Sanchez himself improved on his rookie campaign. He helped the Jets put together an even better season in 2010. Sanchez passed for 3,291 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions during his sophomore campaign, which were all improvements over his rookie year. The 2010 Jets finished 11-5, but were still a wild card team due to New England's 14-2 record. After eking out a victory against the Colts on a last-minute field goal in the wild card round, Sanchez and the Jets faced their most hated rival in the divisional round, the Patriots. The Patriots, who boasted the best record in the league, were heavy favorites to win the Super Bowl. The Patriots were 9.5-point favorites to beat the Jets. However, Sanchez's 3 touchdown passes helped the Jets pull off a stunning 28-21 upset. They advanced to the AFC Championship for the second year in a row, this time facing the Pittsburgh Steelers. Things looked dire for the Jets when the Steelers raced out to a 24-0 lead. However, a furious second-half comeback that included 2 touchdown passes from Sanchez would almost bring the Jets back. It would come up just short. The Steelers won the game 24-19 and would go on to lose to the Packers in the Super Bowl. 2011 was the best statistical season of Sanchez's career. He threw 3,474 yards and 26 touchdowns, which would both turn out to be career highs. However, the season was less successful for the Jets. Despite being 8-5 with 3 games to go, the Jets would lose all 3 and miss the playoffs as 8-8. Things would go further downhill in 2012. Sanchez threw less than 3,000 yards while throwing more interceptions than touchdowns. The Jets dropped to 6-10. After Sanchez suffered a preseason injury that would cause him to miss the entire 2013 season, the Jets replaced him with rookie Geno Smith. They moved on from Sanchez after the season. Sanchez spent the remaining 5 seasons of his career as a journeyman backup. He spent 2 seasons with the Eagles, starting a total of 10 games for them. He also spent time with the Broncos, Cowboys, Bears, and Redskins before retiring following the 2018 season. In his 10-season career, Sanchez started 73 games, going 37-36, and he threw for 15,357 yards, 86 touchdowns, and 89 interceptions. Despite a promising start to his career, Sanchez could accurately be described as a first-round bust. And that'll do it for the bottom tier. Stay tuned for the next part of this series, which will be the mid-tier, numbers 29 to 21. See you next time.